Welcome to the Love Mondays podcast. My goal is to bring inspiring and authentic guests on the show who can help everybody love their Mondays and every other day of the week. To be intentional, energized, and excited about the life we're building. Today's guest is someone with a story of courage, ownership, and growth. Sam Akrivopoulos started his career working as a plumber for someone else. Like many people, he had a steady job, a clear path, but at some point he made a bold decision. He decided to take a chance on himself and start his own business, Flowtek Plumbing. Since then, he's built a thriving business and carved out his own path. On a personal note, Sam and I have been friends for several years. We lived on the same street. We often played roller hockey against our sons, Samuel and Jacob, and our daughters, Nicole and Jasmine, hung out together as kids. Good times for sure. Sam, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Amazing. So Sam, first question, and we're recording this on a Monday. Do you love Mondays?
I never used to love Mondays. Actually, your book was quite inspiring, actually. And Mondays are always a great opportunity to take over the world, like I always say, and one Monday at a time, I guess.
I love it. So what advice, building on that opportunity to change the world, do you have for my listeners who maybe don't love their Mondays?
I'd say, I always tell everybody, always have a why. Like, why are you doing something, right? If you have that dream, then no matter be a Monday, a Tuesday, a Wednesday. I mean, every day will be, no matter what day it is, you'll wake up excited to do what you're doing because you're reaching your goal. Whatever you're doing, you're moving that much closer to your goal, no matter what it is, right? So
amazing. And were you always like that, or when you're working for somebody else, did you love your Mondays?
I wasn't always like that. No, I've been learning for years. It's still learning a lot of stuff, even to this day. Mondays are always, it's always like, oh crap, I gotta go back to work, right? And it's different when you have your own business because it's okay, Monday, it's another opportunity to finish another job, make some more money. Get that much further ahead to your goals that you're reaching, right? So yeah.
Amazing. So tell me the story. Like, you're working for somebody else and then you make a decision to start your business. Tell me that story.
Yeah. So I started my apprenticeship with my godfather. I worked with him for 8 years, and he's a great guy. He's like a father to me, and really taught me, gave me a good foundation of what type of workmanship to work, tradesman to be. Learned a lot of good workmanship with him. And then after him, we parted ways, and I ended up working for this other company for about 8 years, and then I went to work for another company for another 4 years, but I always wanted to open my own business, even from high school. I mean, I always I remember talking to my buddy back in the day in high school. I remember this conversation. Like, hey man, one day we're gonna have our own business. Still, 16 years old, and what did I know about opening up a business back then, right? And so I always wanted to do it. Just seemed cool to have your own business and stuff, right? So while working for these companies back in the day, I always did side jobs on the weekend. Like, the guys even called me Side Job Sam, right? Because I was always doing side jobs, right? So when they would go home after 3:00 or 3:30 when we'd finish, I'd laugh at them. I go, guys, my day's just starting, man. I'm just going to work right now, right? So I was slowly throughout the years building my clients, and the funny story is that when I always wanted to open up the business eventually, but I always said, okay, maybe when I'm mortgage free, maybe when a little bit more financially stable, maybe when the kids get older, right? And then one company I was working for, we only worked 4 days a week. I don't know if you remember that when I used to tell you, you used to tell me, oh, you bastard, you only work 4 days a week, right? But I wouldn't actually work only 4 days a week. I'd work Fridays and Saturdays and sometimes Sundays on my own jobs, right? But the one Friday I didn't have nothing going on, and I said, you know what, man, I'm opening up this business today. I said, screw it, let's go. And I drove downtown, went to the ministry, and at that point, the company that Grace was working for, my wife, the company was bankrupt. She was good. She was losing her job. My son was like 1 year old, right? So I was like, what better time than now? Now's the time when it's going to push me. I have to make this work, right?
Yes.
There's no going back, right? So I went downtown and went to the ministry and told them I wanted to open up Flowtek Plumbing. And they said, "Oh, do you want to be incorporated or a sole proprietor?" And I didn't know what the heck the difference was at the time, right? I just said, "Well, it's that one where they can't sue you. Like, it's incorporated." So I'm like, okay, yeah, that's the one. So they said, "Well, you have to go to a search house and get your name checked to see if anybody has your name." I'm like, "Oh, do you know how do I do that?" I was always asking questions because if you don't ask questions, nobody's ever going to tell you anything, right? So the lady at the ministry was pretty nice. She told me where a search house was. I went there right away, and they did the search, and sure enough, nobody had the name because it was the way I spelt it, and and yeah, and then I went back to the ministry, paid my $360 at the time or whatever it was, and Flowtek was born. And
That's
and
amazing.
I never looked back. I was just calling everybody. I remember being so excited and just calling everybody I knew. Hey, open up my own business. If you guys need a plumber, if you guys need anything, let me know. And yeah, that's how it started. So much for being mortgage free. And when the kids get older, it's
No,
I
it's
made that decision that one day. I don't know what it was. I just got fired up, and I said, you know what, I'm not waiting any longer. What better time than now? And I just went and did it.
yeah, there's so
Yeah.
much there, right? Like I love how you're saying you're always curious and, go find a search house. I don't even know if there's search houses anymore. I think there's Google now. But
This was 16 years ago, or almost
But
17 years ago.
no, but it's cool how you just kind of got up and said, "Look, I'm side job Sam, and I'm starting my own business." I really like that. But
Yeah.
were you unhappy? Like, what actually caused you to go and start a business? Like, was there a point of frustration or something? What made you go downtown and do it?
No, no, I wasn't. I wouldn't say I wasn't unhappy. I was always kind of a positive guy, and I'd go to work, and I actually liked working. I mean, I enjoyed it. I mean, it's not that I didn't like working for somebody. I just wanted to do my own thing. I guess it was to prove it to myself, maybe. I mean, I came from nothing, right? I mean, my plumbing was my way out. Like I told you, I grew up in a fairly rough neighborhood. We're poor, single mom. I knew my dad, but my parents were divorced when I was really young, and we grew up very poor, right? So if I wanted something, I always had to work for it, right? Even from a young age. I had every job from paper boy, you know, working at a farm, working at a pharmacy delivering drugs, pharmaceutical drugs, not those other type of drugs came later on in life that even got into problems with those too, right? And I got into some trouble with the police, and I was like, man, I got to do something in this neighborhood. I can't go on like this. I'm gonna end up in jail for the rest of my life. So,
Amazing.
my pathway was plumbing. My plumbing teacher was a really cool guy at the time, and I was like, I want to be a plumber, and I just made the decision then that I was going to be a plumber. 16 years old, and that was my way to get out of the neighborhood and make some sort of success for myself. At that point, I didn't even have any. I wasn't thinking, okay, I'm gonna open up my business. I just wanted a job. I just had to get out
Yeah,
of trouble, right? So that was the point at the time. But yeah, I always had the mentality of thinking big. Like I said, I remember that conversation like it was yesterday, talking to my buddy who at the time where we were telling me, let's open up our own business, right? And now he actually works for a pretty big company. He did good for himself now. He never opened up his own business, and I
amazing.
kept pushing him to do that. But he's pretty much running somebody else's business, and he's got some kind of partnership deal with that and stuff, right? So he did pretty well for himself as well, right? But yeah, it's been quite a journey. It's been quite a journey. I had my why was I had to, I wanted to prove it to myself and build some success, right? And I never had that growing up, right? Never had anybody around me who had success. I had some pretty good role models growing up, right? But yeah, I think I don't know. It's not that I wasn't unhappy. I just always wanted to do it. I just thought it'd be cool to have your own, have your own destiny in your own hands, right?
Oh, yeah, I love that. And
Yeah.
so what were the first couple of years like?
It's hard work. I mean, it wasn't like how it is now. Like right now, I'm not really on the tools that much anymore. But at the time when I first started, it was, sometimes I wouldn't see my kids for like 4 days because I'd leave early in the morning and come back late at night. By the time I came back, they're already in bed. And that happened, sometimes, 2, 3 days in a row. I wouldn't see them actually awake, right? Because I was
Mm.
working late hours, even not even working for a company. It was really when I was really on my own, just because I was busy. Thankfully, always been pretty steady busy. That's a good thing about plumbing. There was a lot of work out there, right? But I had to work hard. I mean, and I didn't want to say no to anybody, right? So I'd be working at one job from like say 7 to 4 or whatever, and then I'd go work at another job sometimes from 5 to 11 at night sometimes, right? Just to catch up on work and make everybody happy, right? And yeah, it was a lot of long hours, and a lot of learning curves. That's for sure. You know.
Yeah, and I mean, there's all these other skills now. You got to sell, you got to invoice people, you got to collect. Like, how did you learn all the other aspects of the business?
Uh, yeah, I don't know. I kind of I learned quite a bit working with my godfather. I think like how he quoted jobs and stuff, but I would say I don't know. I just kind of learned just by like for quoting jobs. I just learned, okay, how long will it take me to do this? And I count the hours, and I just kind of learned it myself, right? And I would read business books too. Like I was never one to read books. My wife loves reading books like novels, but I was never a novel guy. If I was going to read something, I was going to get something out of it. So if I'd read any book, it was always business books. How to win friends and influence people. How to
Amazing.
those Think and Grow Rich. Those types of books, right? And eventually, just I just figured out and got better at it, right? At the beginning, I was standing behind my wife while she was sending emails. I was like, no, no, say this, let's say that, because I wouldn't even type the emails. I was standing behind her. Okay, write this now in the quote. Okay, write that, and then now we have a cloud-based system, and it's all integrated, and I know how to send an email. I didn't even know what CC was. I remember the first year of business, I was like, what's that CC thing? I go, well, maybe that guy CC'd you. I was like, oh yeah, okay. And I don't want to feel like I was stupid. Like, so I was like, oh, okay, and I couldn't go to Google at that time. What a CC be, right? There was no AI or anything like that back in those days, right? But I meant,
Yeah, I love your story because it's just figuring out stuff as you go along, right? And I love how you talked about Think and Grow Rich and how to win friends and influence people. And I know, a couple of years ago we were talking about, I think you attended a virtual Tony Robbins session around the
yeah.
power of mindset. So how important is mindset when you're running a business?
Oh, it's huge. It's huge. I mean, I had a lot of struggles, like of, just being frustrated, not being able to find guys, and then the guys being not what you wanted them to be, and they would make mistakes. And there's so many times where it's like, oh, why am I doing this shit? I had it so good where I was working. I should just go back to work and screw this. And just shut the doors down. But then deep inside, like, no, man, if somebody else can do it, I can do it. Like this, I'm figuring this out, right? And then I learned how to just be very positive, right? And the mindset's very important. There's so many guys that I worked with that, like back in the day when I was working for a company, that went on their own, and then they quit. They went back. They either lost money, or they have all these excuses why they quit, right? And I didn't want to have any of those excuses, no matter what. Like when I was so pumped up when I opened up the business, when I went to the ministry that one day, that nothing was going to stop me. I didn't care. Like I said, I even said to myself, "And if I lose money, whatever, I'm going to make it work." And there's nothing that's going to stop me. I'm going to make it work no matter what. I don't know how. I knew that I was going to make it work. The how, and then the how I was going to do it, I don't know. I knew I had the why, so that was going to, everything else would figure itself out. I went all out. I bought a nice truck at the time, and I went all out. I got air conditioning in the truck. Nowadays, this stuff's all standard, right? It wasn't standard back in the day, and uh, and so I just got this really nice truck, and I said, you know what? I'm gonna just go all out in this truck, and it's gonna push me even harder to be successful, because I got these payments I got to make on this truck, right? So
Yes.
so that's kind of how I motivate myself sometimes, is put myself under pressure, and there's no going back. That was my thing. There's no going back. There's no, like, I was in the plumbers union, and they would say, oh, Sam, you should keep your pension, and keep paying your dues, your union dues. I'm like, pay my dues for what? I got no plans on going back, man. I'm not going back, right? So eventually I pulled all that pension money out. I was like, no, I pulled it all out, and I invested it in, whatever, in other stuff. And so there was no plan on going back. And
So where does this courage come from? Like, in my book, I talk about burn the boats, right? Just going all in. And you had this mindset where I'm going to figure this out one step at a time. Like, where does that come from?
you know what? I honestly, I think it comes from growing up the way I did. Like I never had much growing up, and I had to work hard for everything that I wanted. Right? Like if I wanted nice shoes, I'd have to work for it. Like I was fortunate that my mom, like she gave me, she bought me a bicycle. And like nowadays, it seems like it's a standard thing. It's not even a gift anymore for a kid. It's like a necessity. Like well, you buy them a bike. But a bike for me, it was like I had to beg for it for my birthday or when it was Christmas or something. I'd beg for these things, and she would somehow make it happen with these little things, right? But for the most part, I had to work hard for everything. Like I said, I had so many part-time jobs and so many jobs growing up. Like I said, from the newspaper boy, I was installing carpet. I was working at grocery stores and any job that I can get. I was a bus boy at the time when I first started the apprenticeship. I started doing co-op in high school, right? And a funny story there is my godfather was a plumber, but I didn't know who he was. I never met him, right? And so I'm having lunch with my dad one day, and because I only see my dad once every few weeks and stuff, and we usually go out to lunch, and he's like, "Oh, how's things?" And like, "Oh, good, things are okay." And like, and he wasn't much to talk about stuff. He didn't really talk about personal things, so we pretty much just go out to lunch. Okay, everything's okay. Everything's okay. Okay, see you later. I would go and I'll be on my way, right? But he has also you have to. Well, I'm looking for I'm finishing this plumbing. I'm doing this plumbing co-op thing, but I'm looking for a job so I can start an apprenticeship. And he's like, your godfather has a plumbing business. Really? I'm like, I've been telling you, like I'm doing this plumbing course. Like now you tell me like my godfather's a plumber. I didn't even know, right? And so yeah, and then I met him, and yeah, and then the journey started there, right? But yeah, I think the courage just comes from. I think it has a lot to do with the neighborhood. Like I've been
Hmm.
with some struggles, gotten through some trouble as a kid, and I had to fight through that. And there was nobody ever there to help me get through that. My mom wasn't there to guide me through these bad situations. I would never tell her about anything bad things that I was getting myself into. Right? I always have to figure it out on my own. Right? So I was very independent at a very very young age. Right? Because my mom and dad split up when I was very young. And so I was basically forced to be the man of the house from a very young age, right? I mean, not saying that I was a responsible man of the house, but I still have to be very independent at a very young age, right? So I think that helped me a lot. And then growing up, like I said, where I grew up, there was a lot of there's a lot of drugs in the neighborhood, a lot of criminal activities going on in the neighborhood, and some things I've got involved with just because I was living in the neighborhood, and you're a product of your environment sometimes, right?
Yes, yes.
And I learned a lot off of that stuff. I don't regret any of it. Sure, there are some things I have to do a little different. Sure, if I knew what I know now, but I didn't know what I know now back then, right?
Yeah,
So,
no, it's a cool story because you talked about having like this apprenticeship with your godfather. And I think it kind of gave you a path, right? Where you're like, okay, there's something there. You then became side job Sam. And then you started saying, hey, there's something here that you could see. You had a vision, right? Like a why, and you wanted to be your own boss type of thing. So
mhm.
then, okay, you get through the first couple years and you start building a business. And I know now you've got multiple trucks on the road. You have a team of people. Tell me what business is like now, and how do you assemble a team that you can trust?
Yeah, well, I mean, it took a while to be able to trust somebody, right? To be able to trust somebody where you work. But I learned a long time ago that nobody's going to be exactly like you, right? You got to guide them. You got to guide them through it, right? And so I've learned how to learn and train guys to do things like how you want it, right? Are they always going to be perfect? No, it's not always going to be perfect, right? But I knew I had to stay on top of them and then trust that they were going to do things the way I wanted. And if it didn't happen, then I have to train them again. I have to teach them again. Okay, guys, that there's have to be some patience. I learned how to have patience too, teaching guys as well, right? I think a lot of problems a lot of plumbers have, at least from what I hear about, they get frustrated, right? They don't have no patience, right? And they're like, oh, yeah, I don't want to waste my time with this guy. Forget it. They just fire him, right? Instead of just taking that time of putting the time into that person to teach them and to train them, and then, okay, you might take a little bit of time in the beginning, but you'll earn later on, right? It'll make life easier for you later on, right? So I think as soon as I got past that hump of trusting guys to do the job, then then it started growing more from there. And then once I hired a couple more guys, I learned to manage guys in the way that I say, okay, I know if I need this job done, I know I'm going to get a certain guy to do a certain job, right? Because I know he's good at it. The other guy's really good, but he's just not as good as the other guy when it comes to certain things. And so sometimes the other guy's not as good as the other guy as well. So I learned how to manage them to the best of their abilities, and to whichever situation, which type of jobs that we had to do, right?
Yeah, no,
So
I love the patience and trying to figure out the right people for the right jobs. And then the other memory I have is right around Christmas time. I'd always see you with a truck full of booze, and you'd be going to give gifts to your clients. And I love the fact that you always took care of your clients. So, what are some lessons learned around sales and client relationships that you would share?
yeah, I like to pride myself in customer service, right? So I always wanted to be, yeah, super nice to my clients, and always be in a good mood, right? I hear a lot of times from clients that, oh, this is like a competitor. Oh, he's so grumpy. Oh, that guy, every time they don't want to deal with him, right? And so, and I win right there because I'm not really a grumpy guy, right? I try to be positive. I show up. I'm joking around with the clients, and depending on the client, some clients don't want no joke around. They're like no bullshit type of guy. They just want the job done, and that's it. That's fine. And then you learn how to adapt to certain clients and what their needs are, right? But yeah, with customer service, it was again learning. I learned a lot, right? Like how to win friends and influence people. It's a great book that teaches you how to deal with certain people differently. Also, I learned about DISC. You
Yeah,
heard
the
of
disc profile. Yeah.
yeah, DISC profile, right? So when I learned about that, it was like, wow, it's amazing. That's right. Everybody's different. Everybody operates differently, right? There's the D's, the
Yes,
I's, the S's, the C's, and I dug deep into that, and uh and yeah, and that helped me as well, right? If I was to give anybody advice, is just teach yourself. Like learn. Don't be afraid to learn new things, right? I mean, it's always the more you learn, the better you can service your clients, right? And the easier you'll make it for yourself too, right? So yeah, I
exactly.
learned how to be patient. I learned that I had to learn.
Amazing. And what
What
about sales? So acquiring new customers and just going into different spaces like, industrial, for example. Like how did you build a sales skill set like that?
I was pretty fortunate that I would just it was a lot of word of mouth stuff, right? I never really had to go chase clients all that much. I got put on. I would go to a job and they liked their work and they put us on a bidders list, and then we were able to start bidding on these jobs, right? And then a lot of times where we bid on these jobs, sometimes we're not always the cheapest guy, right? But a lot of times they want to use us still, right? They're like, oh, Sam, I don't really like that guy. We know we like dealing with you guys better, right? And so they want to negotiate with the pricing on that. So they give me the opportunity to get those jobs that way, right? And so it was just building the relationships, right? Like you said, taking care of your clients, whether that's giving them a bottle at Christmas. I mean, that the bottle at Christmas is usually I love doing that because it's an opportunity for me to thank them and also to go see them. Right? There's a lot of times where I don't see my clients
Yes.
often, right? Because usually they call me. I send one of my guys over there and they get the job done. Right? And I'm not always on the job all the time. So there's times where I don't see them for a few months at a time. So at Christmas gives me a chance to meet them and thank them and appreciate all the work that they've given us. Right? So
Yeah, and that goes a long way, right? Like just taking the time to acknowledge and thank your customers. And I was listening to a video by this guy Jesse Itzler, just phenomenal, and he was saying he sends 20 handwritten notes every year. And who
mhm,
even writes stuff anymore, right? Like it's usually like an email or something like that. And he says there's magic in that personal touch, which I know you have, right? And
mhm.
I mean, for me, whenever I saw you, you're always in a good mood. You always had tremendous energy. And I think as a business owner, that rubs off on your clients, right? And I even have that memory when Portugal won the Euro Cup and you're in your truck in your jersey for a week straight. And I'm like, only Sam would do that. But I think it again connects to that daily energy you bring to everything you do. Okay,
Yeah.
amazing. So one other thing that's always fascinated me, you've always been into martial arts. So tell me how that's helped you in your life.
Oh boy, it's helped tremendously. I mean, there's always struggles that people go through personally, business, and whenever if I'm in a bad mood or in a pissed off mood, I go to Taekwondo, and all that stuff would all go away. Like for example, I be having a bad day, I'd go to the gym and I'd work my ass off over there, and then I get out of the gym and I'm so calm and relaxed, because I've had such a good workout. Man, I'm such an a-hole earlier. What the heck why was I so pissed off? Because yeah, I always like to be in a good mood, but I can get pissed off as well, just like anybody else does, right? It's just because of different, being frustrated at different situations of daily lives, of either be personal or business, right? And so it's helped me learn resilience too, right? I mean, I was doing Taekwondo for geez, it's got to be 18 years now, and I was doing it before I opened up the business, and then also throughout the business, I kept training off and on. I always wanted to. The goal was always to get the black belt, right? And my master never, he didn't just give them away. So I wanted to really, if I was going to get it, I wanted to earn it, right? And
Yes,
a lot of
yes.
gyms kind of give those things away, right? And so I wasn't able to train consistently, because of the business. The business was my main focus, right? And then turns out, I needed one more rank for my black belt, right? And I had that. I was a red belt. It's called, senior red belt. After senior red belt, you're black belt. I was senior red belt for, geez, I don't know, 6 or 7 years, maybe longer. It might have been 8 years, right? And I went to go visit my master one Christmas, and just to give him a bottle, because he would get a bottle too, not just the clients. And so he then he sent me a message. He's like, "Oh, Sam, thanks for the gift. I really appreciate it. And listen, this year is the year you get your black belt. No more dicking around, right?" That was he was kind of like a father figure to me too, and a father figure to many others as well. And that was enough to just blow smoke underneath my butt and say, you know what, you're doing this. For the next 6 months, my focus was just on that. Not that I didn't care about the business, but that went first, because I knew that if I took care of myself and I was feeling good about myself, which I would feel great after that accomplishment, I would better serve my business and better serve my family and everything else, right? So I always said that, take care of yourself, take care of your health, because if you're good mentally and physically yourself, then you can be a better businessman, a better husband, a better father. So 6 months I trained hard, and every day I was basically at the gym every day, not the Taekwondo gym, but if I wasn't at Taekwondo, I'd be at the regular, like, the Good Life gym nearby and be working out there, and yeah, I did it and it went well, and yeah, I got it, and then then had some then I had a bad accident afterwards, right? So I don't know if we want to talk. Are we going to talk about
Look, we can talk about that, right? Because I think it's about like learning life skills to rebound from setbacks, right? So maybe you
that?
can share the setback and what you did to rebound in your own way.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, yeah. So I came back from went to Portugal that one summer right after my testing. It went well. Had a beautiful vacation. Came back, and then a couple weeks later, I was in my backyard. So to make a long story short, I mean, I guess I got dehydrated that day. I was feeling really dizzy. Came inside my house and told my wife, I was like, guys, I don't know, I'm feeling really dizzy. I think I'm gonna faint, and I just fell backwards, and I ended up fracturing my skull on the right side, and blood came out of my ear, and uh, and I was completely knocked out. I got all the years in Taekwondo and all getting hit to the head. One thing, I never got knocked out. That's one thing I never got. I've knocked out somebody else, but I've never got knocked out myself. Thankfully, I guess I was pretty lucky that way, or I just had a hard head. I don't know, but I've got hit many a times, but this time, this one really knocked me out, and so thankfully, the blood that came out of my ear actually saved my life, because otherwise, blood would have hemorrhaged in my brain, and who knows what could have happened, right? It could have been a vegetable or who could have died, right? I mean, it was crazy. So I rebounded from that, and I just said, you know what, I'm kicking this thing's ass. This thing's not going to bring me down. That Taekwondo and all those life skills that I learned throughout the years gave me that strength to when something like that happens. I just said, no, I'm not not it, man. You're not done yet. It's another chance at life, right? So, but it was hard to get back into the gym, and I ended up gaining a little bit of weight, and I went back to the gym in January, and then when the master saw me, he's like, "Sam, what happened to you?" Because he never hold nothing back. He was no filter. Goes, man, you gained weight, man. You didn't look like that when I gave you the black belt. What the hell happened, right? It's like, yeah, I know, sir. I'm sorry. Look, call him sir, right? Out of respect, like, sir, I'm sorry, listen, but I'm coming back I'm going to get back on track. And so I was getting back on track. I started training again, and then had a bad ski accident. And this accident was way worse than the first one. So the first one was like a walk in the park to this one. So I ended up going down the hill, and I got tripped by accident. I ended up landing on my chin straight into the hill. My head hyperextended back, and I
Wow.
fractured my spinal cord. And sorry, hyperextended my spinal cord and fractured my bone at the top of my neck. I was completely paralyzed at that time. Like, I was on the hill, lying down on my, lying my head like this, and I couldn't even move at all. I couldn't move my head. I couldn't move anything. And I thought, oh, okay, maybe I'm a little winded, right? But I was wide awake. I didn't get knocked out. Still didn't get knocked out at that point. Still didn't get knocked out. And but yeah, and then eventually started. It's after a couple minutes. So I thought maybe I just got winded. So I gave it some time, and then I started yelling, help. I couldn't even yell at help. I had no strength, right?
Wow.
And so eventually they put me in the stretcher. The guys came, they did a good job. They put me on a toboggan, bring me down the hill, and on the way to the hospital, my legs started spasming, spasming, right, like shaking, and miraculously, I don't know, my body started coming back alive in the hospital. I mean, I still couldn't lift anything, but and I couldn't walk yet. It took a couple of days before I actually got on my feet, and I had to use a walker, and I was walking with the walker, and yeah. But when I was in the hospital and they were doing MRI, they did an MRI and they did a CAT scan and did another CAT scan again afterwards, and I told the doctor, I said, so what? They said, oh, you're gonna need surgery. I said, well, what if I don't want surgery? What can happen? They said, well, you may be quadriplegic. I'm like, so I guess I'm getting surgery then, right? So then they come back into the room. She said, well, we're waiting for the results. Once we get the results back, I'll come back and see you. She came back, and the ER doctor at the time, and she said, well, good news. They're expecting a full recovery, and they don't see no acute reasons for surgery now, right?
Oh,
So I'm
wow.
like, oh, okay, great. So I'm like, all right, let's get to work. Let's get this thing done, right? And then a couple of days later, I was able to get on the walker, and I was just dragging my feet. Like, I couldn't even lift a toothpick up at the time, right? So it's been a long struggle. I'm still having issues to this day, right? It's been a year, and it's probably been about 13 months now, almost 14 months. But the doctor said I'd never be able to lift up my hand up over my head, and here it is. Here I can do it now. So I'm not 100% recovered, but I'm a lot more recovered than what the doctors thought I'd be. So yeah, I'm walking again. I can run on the treadmill. I just choose not to run because I just don't want to run. It's probably not good. I still have damage on my spinal cord. Apparently, it's there for life, but you know what? Could have been a lot worse. The whole time through that injury, I'm like, what? Could have been a lot worse. I could have been stuck in a wheelchair, but I'm not.
Yeah,
So I
no.
feel very blessed that this is a I wasn't being the best version of myself, I thought at the time, and that's the universe giving me an opportunity to be the best version of myself, right? And that's my focus now, man. I mean, I thought I was gonna I thought for a while, I'm like, no, I'm happy the way the business is right now. I don't wanna I'm not trying to grow it anymore. But then, I don't know, at the beginning of this year, I thought, why not? Like, imagine that
Yeah.
story. Like, imagine just, going through all this, going through what I'm going through right now, which I'm still going through a lot of stuff. I still can't tell the difference between hot and cold from the half of my body. So from my
Wow.
chest down, I can't tell the difference between hot and cold. There's still weakness in my arm, right? But my left leg is still really stiff, but it's okay. I mean, why can't I grow the business? So my plan is to grow the business a little bit more this year, and keep growing it, and see how, and do what I wanted to do at the beginning, right? I mean,
Yeah,
so
no, there's an amazing resilience that you have, right? Like I had this vision of Arnold Schwarzenegger saying, "I'll be back," and I think you have that. You're like,
That's
whether it's
right,
going
man.
for it and starting, it's like, okay, what's that first step to building a business, to recovering from an injury, to getting your black belt? And it's what I love about you. It's like, hey, I'm just going to take that step and figure it out as I go along. And I think there's so many life lessons there to say, first of all, go for it. And imagine if you hadn't made that decision to start your business and you're still working for somebody. Like, look at the two different lives that are possible there, right? And then even, the sales skill set for me is I work with many business owners, and that's one of the most challenging skill sets. But you've got this energy about you, and I love the resilience part. So what else in your daily routine have we not talked about, right? Because I think routines and habits are powerful. Anything else you do to get yourself to that best version of yourself you talked about?
Yeah, well, I do like a form of meditation too. I don't know if ever talk about Wim Hof. You ever heard of Wim Hof?
So
Wim
I
Hof.
know the cold meditation. Well, now that you can't feel cold, is that why you're doing?
Yeah, I was doing it before. I've been doing it for I've been doing it for a few years now. No, I've been doing
So
it before.
tell us more about your Wim
Yeah,
Hof
so I do my
meditation.
breathing every morning. Every morning, I wake up in the morning and I do my breathing exercises, right? And then I'll jump into the shower. I'll do I'll clean myself with hot water, and then I'll finish with cold, right? And then and even when I go to the gym, if I go to the gym that day after a workout, I'll go into the steam room, and then go into the cold plunge after, because there's a cold plunge pool at the gym that we have,
Amazing.
right? So, and and that helps me keep keep me relaxed, and because I got nerves, and I'm not a man of steel, right? But there's no quitting in me, right? There's no giving up, right? So these things, the meditation and all, I do a lot of self-help stuff, right? To help keep my mind clear and focused, and like I said, you don't take care of yourself, you're no good to anybody, right? You're no good to your business, no good to your family, no good to your friends, right? So it's very important for me to take care of myself. And there's struggles, up and down, there's still struggles here and there, but at the end of the day, I know what works for me, and I know what I got to do to make myself mentally, not only mental muscles here, but this this muscle's the most important one. Without the muscle up here, you could have all the muscles in the world and be be as ripped as you can, but if you're not mentally focused, then all the it won't happen, right? Like they say,
Yeah,
I hear
no.
a lot that they say 80% mental and 20% you know uh, you know activity, right? So I mean,
Yeah, 100%. Like I've been listening to I've been reading a book called Living with the Seal. So I'm sure you've heard of David Goggins, but it's this guy who had David Goggins live with him for a year. And he always said, when you think you're done, you're at 40%. So it's that, hey, you can go further, but a lot of times it's the mental side. Amazing. Sam, your story continues to be super inspiring. Any last words for my audience?
love your Mondays and don't give up. Yeah. Never quit, man. That's my saying, man. Never give up. I made this video of when going through this injury of doing. I started with just walking with the walker, and then slowly doing doing the knee ups, right? And now I can actually do push ups, right? I actually did a push up challenge recently. I
Amazing.
told you about, and so I mean, and during that, and I made this video, documenting my recovery. And then the label of the video, the name of it, it's never give up.
I love it.
So yeah, never give up, never quit. If you want to, if you want to do something in life and you never thought about opening up a business, there's never a right time. The right time is now. Right?
Amazing. I think that's the perfect way to end it off. Sam, thanks so much. Continue to inspire us, man.